TV set. Having said that, I'd also like to ask your indulgence as I call to move into executive session for purposes of discussing collective bargaining. So I'm going to ask for a motion to move into executive session.
I move that the Regional School Committee moves into executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We have to do roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call vote. Sorry. Michael, would you begin, please?
Big Cara, aye.
Oppie, aye.
Foley, aye.
Baptiste, aye.
Hood, aye.
Blanche, aye. Shabazz? Aye. Thank you. Okay, will you excuse us? This should only take about 5 minutes, 10 max. We'll be right back. Thank you.
What's up, brother? Did you get it? Straight.
The agenda. I would request of the members of the committee that you take a minute to look at the agenda as it's been presented to you. And please make note of the allotted times. If there is any interest on the part of any member of the committee to extend the time and have the committee consider that, I will entertain those statements in a minute. But please look it over, decide whether or not you feel any of those items need more time. A couple of things to bring to your attention while you consider that. Number 7, the policy review. For a variety of reasons, the policy subcommittee has not met and will not be meeting pretty much because of conflicts with schedules and so on and so forth until October. So you can eliminate that item from tonight's agenda.
I was wondering if, Marta, could I just ask, we were wondering if the summer program update could go, and I think we have to go right after the international exchange student proposal. Sorry, Rob, but I think Sherry needs to get home since she has to teach in the morning. So I'd like to respect that, if people are okay with that slight adjustment.
Not hearing any objections, we'll make that move. Thank you very much. Any changes in the agenda? Not hearing any then. We don't have the minutes from August 28th. Are those to be submitted the next time?
Yes.
Okay. Then moving on down to announcements and public comment. Before I entertain comments from members of the audience, I would like to extend a public congratulations to Missy Shea and her Future Business Leaders of America students who were regarding their accomplishments with the National Philanthropy Day, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And so I want to extend publicly, on behalf of the committee, congratulations to Missy and to all of her students. Are there any announcements, comments from the audience? Not hearing any. Any announcements from the members of the committee? Okay, then we will move on to the superintendent's update.
Okay. So I'm just going to cover a couple topics tonight. I feel like we just met and had a lot of updates. It's been a busy start of the school year. I would like to say up front, we want to thank Wendy Blumenthal for sitting in tonight to take minutes for Debbie Westmoreland, who isn't able to be with us. So we may, if we take a vote of any sort, Wendy may need us to slow it down a little bit and rephrase, so I'll ask the committee to help out. So thank you, Wendy. I'd like to just start with, I think Kip mentioned one of the topics that I was going to, cover tonight. So that takes care of welcoming, recognizing Missy Shea and her students for their amazing work. Can I take one back? Thank you. Sorry. I also wanted to just mention that many of you have heard already, and there's an attachment here that we are having a benefit for a student who's experienced some significant health issues at our high school. So we are having a Zumba-thon for those people who would like to be involved to benefit one of our 9th grade students, I believe. And this is going to take place on Saturday, September 22nd from 10:30 to 12 in the middle school auditorium. People can register. This information is up on our webpage, but they can also call on the flyer, which is 413-546-2059, to say that they would like to be part of this fundraiser. I don't know, Marta, if there's anything else you wanted me to.
They
just have been wanting to come together and do more. So this was a student's initiative, and this is a mother, one of the mothers of her friends is teaching the Zumba class. So we're all excited about it, and
Great.
hope the community comes out.
Thank you. We'll all be there, Marta. Zumbaing. I also want to mention that last year we had a great opportunity to work with student reporters from our schools, and we have a senior this year, Tim Bobrowski, who will be our new student reporter. Had the opportunity to meet him the other day, and he's very excited to get rolling, and I know that the student stories were really well received. So we'll look forward to more information coming, and again, if the committee has suggestions for articles to be written, I know Tim would appreciate the input. And again, he will be working with Missy Shea as his, the teacher at the high school who works with the experiential learning program. Also, the high school Hurricane Hall of Fame induction ceremony will take place at 6 o'clock on September 29th at the UMass Student Union Ballroom. There are 12 high school athletes from various years of graduation who will be honored, which you'll see the names here. I won't go through all of the names, but people are welcome to purchase tickets that are available in the athletic office at the high school for this event. And many of you may have noticed that the Leo Club at the middle school painted the columns when you walk into the middle school, and it says welcome in 24 different languages. So I know kids were really excited to see that walking into our school doors, and I welcome you all to come and take a look. And we really want to thank the students of the Leo Club and the Leo Club advisors who made this happen for our schools. And last but not least is that we are welcoming the UMass Strings volunteers. They're going to be coming to the middle school and high school to provide lessons for our students. They'll have 15 undergrad and graduate students who will be working under the direction of Professor Elizabeth Chang. And they're going to complement the program that we've had in place from Amherst College, where we had under the direction of Professor David Schneider, which began 2 years ago. We had them coming into our elementary schools and providing lessons for students. So now we have broadened our opportunities for kids in our schools. So it's an exciting time. And I think the last thing I'd like to say is just an amazing start of a school year. I know I stated that at the last school committee meetings. Lots of energy, lots happening, and we welcome you all to come to our schools, to be involved, have visits, and see the amazing staff that we have working with our wonderful students. So that's it for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions of the superintendent? Okay, I'm going to ask Maria to introduce our guests who are here to talk about the next item on our agenda, the International Exchange Student Proposal.
Yes, and thank you, and I'm not going to remember your names because I was just introduced myself. So we're pleased to have you come and talk to us a little bit about the exchange program and how you could support and would like to support students entering our high school. We do have a policy that allows us to consider if we'd like to have exchange students come to our schools. What these gentlemen will be speaking to us tonight is about the program that they represent, and they'll spend about 10 minutes with us, and they'll be able to answer some questions. And then we won't be making any decisions tonight, but we'll be stepping away, looking at enrollments, talking to Principal Jackson before we come and make some recommendations. But we really appreciate the opportunity to hear you tonight. So whatever you're comfortable with, standing or sitting, is fine.
I guess standing is better.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Atanas Bakalov. I'm originally from Bulgaria, and this is my colleague Lars Sujuku.
That's why I didn't recognize
So the names are
Complex.
kind of odd.
Yes.
And we're here with an organization called Green Planet, or GP Homestay for short. We are an educational consulting firm based out of Boston, and we specialize in providing opportunities for American secondary institutions and educational institutions in general for building sustainable international student programs. We work with schools at every step of the way, starting from student recruitment and going through providing support services for these students in terms of residential support, as well as supplementary academic support as necessary, ESL support or tutoring. And We're going to divide the time. Basically, I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the mission of our organization as well as our history. And then Lars will talk about some of the details about the services. And hopefully we'll have several minutes at the end to answer any questions that you might have. So in terms of our mission is to increase the international profile of American educational institutions. This means that, you know, we live in a global world, and we feel it's really important for both international students to experience the value of American education, and for international students to, and for American students to benefit from the value of diversity on American campuses. So we try to foster this cultural exchange and exchange of ideas. Our history started in 2009 when our sister company, the Cambridge Institute of International Education, was founded. We initially started working in the private high school sector with the pilot program on the West Coast. And we've grown extremely rapidly over the past several years. Currently we have 140 private high school partnerships, as well as 25 university partnerships. And we've just recently started to approach public high schools because we think we have a lot of valuable services that we can provide. In terms of our team in our Boston office, we started with 3 individuals in 2009, 2010, and now we're over 50. We have primarily young, bright people that are very invested in that type of endeavor. So we're very quick and think on our feet. So we are very flexible in our approach, and we can provide a lot in terms of helping schools customize their programs and get unique solutions that are specifically tailored for their needs. So I'll let Lars speak a little bit about our services themselves and how they can be beneficial for your schools.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Can everybody hear this? All right. So yeah, like my partner Atanas was saying, what we really aim to do is to work with the school to build its international profile. And we know that every school and every school district is going to be different, so no two programs are going to be similar. And so what we really aim to do is to go into a school, to learn that school so that we can really present that to all these students that we have overseas. We have our main office over in Boston, but we also have 5 offices now overseas, 4 in China, 1 in Korea, and 1 that's opening in Vietnam. So we're pretty excited about the fact that we have, you know, what is it, about 50 employees on the ground there. So we really have our ear to the ground over there, and we really understand what students are looking for in terms of different kinds of schools. And as such, we know how to work with schools to put that best foot forward. Once we start working with the school, it doesn't just end there. We end up expanding locally. So we have at each one of our GP schools a local residential coordinator hired in that area. So there's going to be somebody in the area who's going to be able to answer any questions that you guys have.
Make sure that the families are carefully vetted and pre-selected.
Yeah, so the main reason that GP even started in the first place was because of the need for these homestays, and to get these day schools on the same pedestal as a boarding school, because there's also great schools that just don't have that boarding component. And so once we move over to public schools, we brought that with us. And so the whole process starts with a community. So we want to help foster that community, make things move in that way. The students are going to be part of a homestay family. That family is also going to have a stipend because it costs money to have these kids in your house. Like, it's not just a walk in the park. And so with that, we have the local residential coordinator is going to be somebody who's going to be able to help with those families as far as conflict resolution, as far as cultural competency, really understanding where the student is coming from. And then let's see, we have, after the student gets into the school, we really want to continue helping that student learn and grow, because even though these students have been studying English basically their entire lives, there are still going to be parts where they miss. So we make sure that we have ESL programs if a school doesn't have that. We help build those. We also work with schools to have an online tutoring session, which is subject specific. They may have great English, but they don't quite understand all the terms in biology, and so it's working coming from another language and then another language on top of that American students honestly have problems with. And so we really want to foster that smooth transition for students to get into a school district or a private high school.
One more thing I wanted to mention, and again, back to my initial comment that we tried to build sustainable international student program. The word sustainable is very important because that means at a basic level that a program needs to be fully funded and well supported. So the students that we bring in are F1 visa students that would be full payers. So the unsubsidized cost of education at each of your schools will be covered. So the school wouldn't be subsidizing any international students. And the goal is to not only increase the international profile of the schools and bring diversity, but also to help the communities sustain themselves, both in terms of providing stipends for hosts that are interested in that cultural exchange, and also providing schools with enough funding so they can really educate these students, even if it's a short-term program. I think we can open up the floor for questions if you have any.
Does anybody have any questions?
That would be.
Before we ask questions, I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask, so I'll recognize people, but would prefer not to recognize a person a second time until everyone has had an opportunity to ask questions. Michael?
Yeah, I had two questions. One is in terms of if you can speak about the process of who decides, how a student gets here. So, it might be interest on their part, but what's the vetting process that you alluded to? And I guess the other thing maybe for Maria and for you is, in terms of following the money, if the cost of it per student cost is covered, are you guys, since you're not a nonprofit, right? You're for profit?
Yeah, for profit.
So the family's getting charged money to come, and that's in addition to, just to understand the financial part of that.
I can actually speak about that. So it's a results-driven model. Everything is very transparent, and this would be in our agreement with the school. So basically, the financial model would be determined upfront. Students would be paying the full cost of the entire program. This is true, and our fee would be actually the cost to administer the program, to hire the local coordinator, make sure that there are support services, and what we market abroad is actually a unified tuition figure, tuition room and board figure that would be consistent throughout the entire market or the entire country. So your school wouldn't be marketed, a certain amount here, a certain amount there, and parents wouldn't be shopping for your education. They would be focused on the quality of the institution. So. Sorry, I think I'm kind of missing the question. So basically, you would get that amount at the end. We would get paid to administer the program. We wouldn't charge students necessarily for our service, because the service would be actually to the school and the community to build that program.
And with the vetting part, how does it, may you briefly explain how that works?
Of course. So with the vetting process, we have program coordinators who are going to be working with the school to figure out what kind of benchmarks they want to be setting for students to even apply to get into the school. And then we can work with the school on an admissions process. I know with a lot of our private schools, we have Skype interviews with the students to make sure that it's going to be a perfect fit for both the student and for the school. But like I said, each program is different. Depends on how the school would want to have the students recognized.
Great, thanks.
Other questions from the committee?
Are we going down the line, or
No?
just random questions?
If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Trevor?
I was trying to.
Go ahead.
So, the first question I have, I don't want to insult or offend, but how did we get the dubious honor? How did you choose our school district to try to partner with? What's your criteria for, where you want to place international students? And that's the first question. Another question is, Are all these students from China, Korea, and Vietnam, or we have other students as well? And then I have a third question. I'll let you guys start first.
Okay, so the first question is how this Amherst Regional got chosen. So with a lot of our research, with the students that we have in our networks at current, we found that the best areas to start are going to be near home in Massachusetts. It's better for us because then we're going to be around. We can easily come to a school board meeting, so we've looked into the CVIS process to see what schools can host these students, and then we've been making phone calls, talking to all the schools, seeing what kinds of what things they have going for them, how they're going to work within our system as well. So Amherst Regional is a great area. It's going to be very, very easy to get the kinds of students that you guys would want to come here, as well as have those students want to be coming to this area. So, you know, the first process was just location, as well as just how good a school it is.
Absolutely. So the second question, are the majority of our students coming from East Asia? The answer is yes. And the reason is primarily that this is where the demand lies right now for, again, F1 students. Specifically in 2006, the U.S. government relaxed the visa regime primarily in China. And this opened the floodgates, so there are many students looking for quality American education, and this is the part of the wave of students that is primarily looking to come to the United States. The fact that we're there is not a chance occurrence. It is a result of that demand, and the fact that there are many local organizations that engage in less than savory practices on the ground. So we try to help schools navigate this reality and offset these negative practices. Additionally, we've invested a lot in going to other countries, researching new opportunities, primarily in South America, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, as well as in Eastern Europe, Russia, Romania, Turkey, as well as the Middle East. We have connections there, but the majority of the students actually, I mean, the connections there are less robust because the demand for this type of education is not as strong coming from these territories.
Chairman, may I ask a final question?
Let me go to Kathy.
Yeah, I just, how are the families in the community chosen? And sort of what is do these have to be families with high school kids, and what kind of process do families go through?
The best program happens when the community embraces it. So our initial goal is to reach out within your community and seek out families who might be interested in that opportunity to host an international student either for 6 months or a year, which I think is the maximum for a public school stay for an international student. And this would be our first approach. Now, if there's not enough interest, which I would doubt, but if for some reason the immediate community is not open to that suggestion, we would look outside of that community, but make sure that the families are still in it for the right reason. So we don't want moms and dads who want to pay their 6-bedroom house mortgage, to host international students just because of the money. So we want to make sure that the community is served first.
One way we kind of deter the wrong kind of family is, depending on how many students we want to have for a particular program, we'll typically get twice as many families in that network. That way they can't necessarily depend on the stipend coming their way. They're not necessarily guaranteed to have a student coming to their house. That way it really helps to, I guess, get the kinds of families who want to be doing it for the experience. And the stipend is basically just to offset what the student is going to be costing to have in their house for 6 months, 10 months at a time, 12 months.
Before we proceed, we have already gone over the 10 minutes, so I want people to make sure that their questions are focused and pointed as we continue. Lawrence?
So when you have arrangements with the existing arrangements with schools, is there a certain cohort size of students that you look to place into a school? Because I'm thinking in terms of students coming here, it would be nice to have them to have some kind of support network.
Absolutely, and we work again on a results-driven model. We would work with the school to determine what an appropriate target number of students would be to make sure the program kind of fits your vision. In order for us to make it sustainable and hire that local person, typically around 5 is the minimum. But again, that would be an ongoing discussion we would have with the school. And in terms of providing enough applicants, we would be committed to providing twice as many or more qualified applicants, so you can actually, have a choice.
Rick?
Just for Maria, I think, is the way to look at this is kind of a school choice, international school choice, where the full amount is paid for?
It could be looked at that way. I really am just hearing this for the first time myself, so I'm trying to make sense of how that would fit within our parameters as well.
Is it possible to get a copy of your pilot school program in Long Island, New York?
We actually have a reference letter from that school, so we have 5 copies, and we can provide them at the end of this presentation. And you're free to call them as well and talk to them about it.
I know Trevor had another question. Does anyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak? Rob, question? No? Trevor?
This is to Maria and,
Sure.
and the gentleman making the presentation. It's always hard to bring cultures together. And in Amherst, it's not a unkept secret that we have clashes of culture right here in Amherst. So my question kind of falls to the other end of the spectrum of what you described in choosing the right family. You described, making sure we don't have families that are trying to pay their 6-bedroom house, with a stipend of international students. But on the opposite extreme, we have cultural differences between people who, go from hand to mouth to pay their rent here in Amherst. So my question is, what criteria could you use to have international students, instead of looking at this as a, school choice international style, as a cultural upliftment for cultures that are not in the mainstream? In other words, if families that were on the lower end of the economic spectrum hosted international students and were able to experience the culture from that perspective. I'm just asking, does that meet your criteria of families that would host these students?
Well, every family is going to be different.
Mhm.
We have that local residential coordinator person who's going to be going around and doing these site visits. Our number one concern with the students is going to be safety first and foremost.
Mhm.
And if they're not going to be in a place where they're going to be able to thrive and to really experience what they need to experience, we're probably not going to choose a family of that nature.
Mhm.
However, we do take every inquiry very seriously. If a family wants to be a part of the program, they'll get vetted just like every other family, and if they pass through that, then they pass through that, and we provide them with the students.
Well, luckily, poor people are just as safe as everybody else in Amherst.
That's great. That's great.
Luckily.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your presentation. Really appreciate your time and your efforts in this regard. If you do have materials that you want to distribute, would you perhaps leave them right up here on the front desk, and we'll take
I
this
know.
under consideration for a future decision.
I can't help
Thank
you
you.
with that. I don't know how to do it either. All right, there we go. Yes, I know you have some cards you wanted to leave, and then if you have any letters, you're welcome to leave those with Wendy, and we'll make sure we distribute to the whole. Yes. Thank you so much. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to invite Marta up to talk about the summer program. Marta?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here to share some great news. We are accompanied today by Sherry Abbott, who was the coordinator director of our summer program at the high school. Joel Singley was the person in charge of the middle school program, the VELA program. He couldn't be here tonight, but I will report briefly about it. And so I just want to call Sherry, who was stellar and had a great summer school.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, it's nice to see you guys.
Good to see
I'm
you.
a social studies teacher during the year, so I was a summer school social studies teacher, and I had the honor of being director this year. And I'd like to thank Maria and Marta and Jerry and the transportation services. We expanded the services we could offer to students at the high school this year. We bus students for the first time. We offered some food services. We piloted four classes, including 3 ninth grade intervention courses. So we're expanding the vision of the summer school. We're trying to change the cultural perspective of it. It's not only for credit recovery and skill support. It's also for enrichment. And we have smaller classes. We have longer periods. There's a flexibility aspect to it. So we had more students, I believe, than in the 5 last previous years, 127 students.
That's great.
Yeah. So I have objectives for next year, which I can put in a report.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Any questions or comments for either Sherry or Marta?
So the goal tonight too is we're going to talk to you about summer services in general, and then we're going to also talk to you specifically around special education summer services where there is a distinction. So you'll hear about all.
So I want to just echo what Sherry said, is that we really had a lot more students than we have had in the past. As you know, the Department of Education, the DSE, has provided funds in the past, but those have diminished greatly. So right now we have, we have a little entitlement grant and a little bit of competitive, and it's like a fourth of what it has been in the past. So I like Sherry's energy in bringing in. She's got the, she's in tune with our mission and did a really great job of bringing a lot more kids in for different purposes. So we had a great experience, and like she said, we had transportation. We had students in kindergarten through seniors together for the first time. It was a fabulous experiment because we had monitors on the bus, of course, and it was fabulous. And we had no incident. It was great. So everything about it was very good, and we're very excited.
Could I add one thing to the school committee? For those of you who were on the school committee last year during the budget cycle, we did approve some additional funding, which supported the high school summer school program, the expansion, and the year before we provided some funding for the VELA, which is the middle school program. So your work supported what was able to happen for our students this summer, which was great.
And in terms of the VELA program, I can just share a few things. They counted with the generous support of the Amherst Education Foundation this year, in addition to Amherst College. They had, all students were welcome, so rising 7th graders and 8th graders. They applied for enrollment regardless of past achievement. The program provided a great opportunity for summer learning, avoid the loss that usually happens, build relationships, etc. In the morning, students worked with teachers and Amherst College interns on engaging academic projects and activities across core subjects. After lunch, students participated in a wide variety of enrichment activities, including leadership training, community service projects, sports, games, etc. 65 students in grades, so rising grades 6 and 7 as of June participated in the program. And you have a list of the many activities they were engaged in. And again, Joel has been fabulous. He is an intervention teacher. He's been doing this for a couple of years. And so we're now going to go to the divide of doing a K through 12 alignment articulation of our summer programs and our regular programs that happen out of school time. So just wanted to share that. And we can share more, but I know there's a short time tonight.
Wonderful programs both, and middle school was able to pilot their math intervention programming. Math Navigator? Yeah, this summer, which was great, which really allowed us to look at interventions for during the school day and after school in the fall, and which was very successful. So, wonderful opportunities.
Questions or comments? Shabazz?
Yes, so I'm trying to understand, if a student just needed trying to recover credit, say in algebra, are they able to just do that, or they got to do all this, the whole piece?
Yep, they can pick part
Just
of the
the
day to attend or the full day. We have 3 sessions.
Other questions or comments? Let me personally thank you as chair, and personally, once again, acknowledge the pride that I have in Sherry, a product of our school system. I think is an extraordinary example of the kinds of, well, she's no longer a student, but the kind of students that we have produced. And you've done an incredibly super job here. Looking at the two sheets, it's extraordinary. The capacity has expanded, and I suspect there's a structure here to allow it to continue to expand, which is really remarkable. I think it also, as you pointed out regarding the culture, removes some of what I think is the negative taint of summer school in the past, as somehow or other something for, it was a negative kind of view. And I think you've done an excellent job in turning that around, and to be credited with that accomplishment. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.
And guidance counselors too really helped out a lot in trying to recruit students and all through, and a lot of other teachers. Lisa can be there with the 21st Century Grant that allowed to have that after school component, the third session. So a lot of great people working together.
Yeah, I just want to say I think this is fantastic, and as we budget for this year, if there's any way we can figure out how to push more money at this, it would be great.
I mean, and it is a huge reflection on the programming that you have the numbers of students who actually come and attend. In particular, middle school students, but, if it's not connected to that credit, kids are coming, and then they're seeing that positive. You work hard and you provide some time during the summer, and they go into the high school, and it's a wonderful thing to keep having that support, and to our staff who come and work during the summer. So, yeah, it's wonderful. So, if we can go, Dr. Brady, Faye Brady is going to come up and talk to us about, give us an update on special education summer services.
So let me just, is this working?
I
Okay.
think it is.
Okay, let me just tell you that although our programs in special education are different than those programs, being here this summer, the energy and the connection even between the programs, the staff that were all here working together, was very, very exciting to be part of. Our special education programs are a little bit different because they're designed really to augment the student's school year. So when you're planning for a special education student summer program, there's really two components that you take into consideration. You're looking at a student and addressing skills for diminishing recoupment, and then the need for regression and recoupment. So you're looking at a student that if they only attended school through June and then came back in September, that there'd be concern that their skills would regress and it would take a longer time for them to recoup. So we are looking to provide programs so that when students come back to school in September, they can really go forward. In your handouts, you have some information. So we had programs from pre-K straight through secondary. So we had a tremendous amount of preschool students that were here this summer, along with elementary from kindergarten through 6th grade, as well as our programs in the high school, which we had 3 programs. Mostly students attended that were in our substantially separate programs during the school year, and they continued anywhere from either 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and sometimes 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week. The scheduling is kind of done on an individual basis, and although the programs are pretty much structured the same as the school year program, there's a lot of individual, because IEPs, the first letter is I, so it's individual. So you're really looking at individual needs and providing that student this program and services to carry them forward with sustaining their skills. And for some of our more disabled students, you're looking at trying to help them bridge that gap from where they are at their level to closer to where their typical peers are. The programs are academically oriented as well as their related services and their social emotional skills. So, any questions about
Thank
that?
you. Members of the committee?
That's straightforward enough.
Amazing programming.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you.
And we were very, very fortunate, and we don't see this in all districts, to have really our own staff with our students year-round, which helps our students progress. Tremendous amount of teachers as well as paraprofessionals supporting. lots of care and commitment. So,
Yes.
and we had a lot of family involvement.
Yes.
Our elementary program ended with a sing-along, and
Mhm.
great parent involvement in that, a lot of energy, really exciting.
One question, in your opinion, looking back on it now, were there resources that you could have used to have expanded the program even further, given the potential student?
Well, when you're talking about special education students, there's never, there's always, like you could say, we could do this
Was there
more
something
and
really
better.
critical?
But nothing. I think we had our related service personnel were there this summer. Transportation is a godsend and really was amazingly flexible and really able to support our students. But thank you for asking that.
What a question.
It's great.
Always.
Anyone on the committee? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Faye.
you.
Rob, welcome.
You don't mind, I'm gonna adjust this down so I can
Please.
avoid dropping my papers all over the floor. So welcome back to school.
Thank you.
You all have in your packets the report from the FY12 results.
Mhm.
Okay, great. I have extra copies if you need them. What you have here is a pretty detailed description of what happened, although, in summary, it's exactly what we predicted going back to last November, I believe it was. Last November, we were looking at about a $350,000 positive balance at the end of the year. We were confident enough that we budgeted that into the FY13 support. And in the third quarter, I came back and told you, well, it's going to be closer to 400,000. And sure enough, it's 380. So it's not too exciting, but here are the details. So rather than belabor this, since you all have it, I'll entertain any questions you may have as to what happened last year and where we ended up and so forth. Really, nothing much changed since the third quarter
No,
report.
actually, we ended very much on target. I do want to say that it was very helpful that we projected those funds and we came in a little above, which helps us to replenish E&D, for which we used for budget support this year. So it starts us in a fairly solid place for budget planning.
Yeah, we are in a good place. And once E&D gets certified, I'll bring that back to you. And it's in a very healthy place at the end of this year as well. Because of this and because of some other revenues that came better than we expected, we're in a healthy place, which is really nice.
Michael?
Yeah, first, I just wanted to commend you. I mean, the fact that it's not exciting is pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a good thing.
Well, in my line, that's the case, but that's not true for everybody else.
No, I totally think it is. And this might be a question for Maria, but since it's in the report, I just wanted to ask. In terms of the charter school enrollment, it looks like there were 72 students. And I'm just wondering, roughly what percentage of the total student body is that?
Oh, I'm going to ask.
32,
Veronica
and there's
Christmas
what,
today.
1,200 total
We're talking
enrollment?
just region, yeah, 1,200. So
1,200, okay.
who's going to do the math?
Yeah.
I can do the math if I knew that.
There
There you
Okay,
go.
great, thanks.
Sure.
And in region, the charter school enrollments matured, and so it's fairly steady year to year
Yeah.
now. When you go to Amherst, we're still ramping up on the
Right.
Chinese charter school, so the numbers are growing each year. But Amherst, for region, for the last few years, it's been pretty
consistent.
steady, give or take a few.
It's a broader pool.
Anyone else in the committee? A question, I
I have
think,
questions I ask
for
you
you,
first.
Maria.
Yep.
Going over to page 3, and
Yep.
to the voc ed enrollment. I'm wondering at what point during the course of the year can we have a conversation about what's being done in the middle school to counsel youngsters to pursue voc ed?
I think we could start to have that conversation with the middle school, anytime, and we could actually have that as part of when we start to go into our budget discussion. In our district, students are able to choose Smith Voc or Franklin. So we do offer those alternatives, and I know they do go through a process, and it's a challenging time for students to decide in 8th grade, which seems so young. And we do have students who will join, and we do have students who join and then return. So I can ask some of the guidance counselors to maybe come in and provide some information for the committee, if that would be helpful.
This may not be a question you can answer
Yeah.
now, but is there, the number of youngsters that come back from Smith and Franklin, is it fairly comparable?
Is it comparable?
To each,
well,
so
to
looking
each
at
other.
each other, I mean, I'm trying to think.
That's a great question. I'll tell you why I'm.
It's variable each year.
It very much
Yeah.
varies by year.
Significantly.
It's very wild.
I think last year we had more coming back from Franklin than from Smith,
Yeah,
but
the year
it's
before it was Smith.
variable,
It was
yeah.
very interesting.
And
It's
you
so
look at the
kids,
pattern.
it's so student specific as to, yeah, it's hard to kind of make that connection.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee?
I just want to
Trevor?
clarify, they're coming back
Trevor?
in 10th grade?
Excuse me?
They're coming back in 10th grade, so they go to vocational
Oh.
school in 9th grade and come back in 10th?
Again,
All
it-
different
What do you
grades.
call
It
it?
really,
They- yeah,
it's all over the place.
yeah.
Anyone else in the committee?
Okay.
Rob, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
He has a few other topics to
I've got some
update us on. Yes.
Next up, we voted a budget last April, I think it was, February? February. And it was predicated on a Chapter 70 award assumption that was included in the governor's H1 budget. And of course, the budget of the state then goes through, no? Copies?
I have it in my packet.
I don't have
Yeah, sorry. It's that page. Yeah, it's the one that, September 6th.
I see too, I found it.
That's the one. It's the September 6th.
So after H1, the governor's budget, we go through the House and the Senate and the Conference Committee. And we don't change the budget every time these folks make another iteration on the process. And this year, they didn't come up with the final budget, was finally released July 9th. And wonderfully, the Chapter 70 had been increased for the region by $60,400. We were hoping for that, but we couldn't bank on it. And I'm bringing that forward to you tonight as to, okay, what are we going to do with that extra $60,400? We have three options. One, keep it, put in the E&D. Two, reduce the assessment to member towns, since that's what offsets, the whole balance. Three, do something else, like fund OPEB or something. We, at the second four-town meeting last spring, had mentioned, because at the time it was looking like a really hard year for towns, that if we got additional funding from Chapter 70, we would reduce assessments. Well, not only did we get additional Chapter 70 funding, the towns got additional funding too. And so this year is not looking nearly as dire as it did back in February. But we had said that, and so I would propose to you that the thing to do with this extra Chapter 70 funding is to reduce the assessments of member towns. And I prepared a motion to that effect in your packets, if you so choose to.
So I would like to suggest that we do that, because it is the conversation that we had at the four-town meeting, as well as, while this year some additional revenue came in, it's still very early in looking at FY14 and knowing what that might mean to the towns in terms of their assessment to the regional schools. So I think it's good to stay, as Rob said, with what we committed to at that time. So.
What I'd like to do is to ask for the motion to be put on the floor, and then a second, and then we can have a conversation about it if that's okay with folks. So I'm going to recognize Michael for purposes of making the motion.
I'd be happy to. I move the Regional School Committee approves amending the assessments to member towns for the FY 2013 Amherst Pelham Regional School District operating budget as follows. Amherst, $13,746,434. Pelham, $1,205,893. Leverett, $1,297,147. Shutesbury, $1,425,355, for a total of $17,674,829.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second from Catherine. Comments and questions? Trevor?
You don't look so surprised. You look so surprised. So,
a question I have, number one, is what is our E&D budget? Not budget, but how much is in our E&D right now? And refresh my memory, I believe it's E&D that we voted previously to take money out of to go to that if the regional school district planning committee needed it, they could use. How much is left in that fund?
Got to split that into two questions. First question has to do with the E&D, and where are we at with that? Well, we don't have an exact number yet because we haven't gotten the number certified for June 30th, 2012, end of year. But I mentioned earlier it's quite healthy because while we had voted to use some funding out of E&D to support the FY13 budget, we also put some in from the FY12 budget. So whereas we probably will not have as much in the E&D fund as we did a year ago, it's still quite healthy. And it's not something I'm fretting about at all.
Gotcha.
Second part of the question is, what about that thing for the regionalization thing? Okay, that's a separate thing. That would come out of what's already in the budget. If you want to look at your
FY13.
the final report on FY13, you see at the bottom there's a contingency line of $280,000. And that's in there for access by further vote of the school committee to address unusual, unprecedented things. And that's where that would come from out of FY13. The school committee would vote to use whatever you decide out of that line to support the regionalization effort. So it's already in the budget. It's not in D anymore.
Gotcha.
Other comments or questions from Catherine? Catherine?
Yeah, I just wanted to support this motion because at that four-town meeting, it really was felt among all four towns that this was the fair and reasonable thing to do, is to reduce assessments when we can. Each town struggles at different in different years, and we sort of felt like if we can alleviate some of the burden this year for some towns that were struggling more than others, it seemed a reasonable and fair thing to do.
Other comments or questions? Yes, Annie?
When will we start putting money into the retirement fund? I'm in support of giving the money back as well, as we said we would, but when does that start?
The
OPEB.
OPEB?
Yes, okay, thank you.
What you should mention. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later on in my presentation.
Okay, I can wait.
We don't have a plan yet, but
We're getting
we'll
close.
Other comments on the motion? Is there someone who will move the question? I'll do it. Okay, I guess, no? Anyone who will move the question?
Don't look so surprised.
Rob?
No, point of order. You don't have to move the question. You can just ask for a vote.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I do it right.
All those in favor?
All those in favor of passing the motion, do we need to have it repeated for anyone?
No, it's written down.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions, carries unanimously.
Awesome.
Rob?
Thank you.
Thank you all. The towns will appreciate that.
Yep. So, the next thing I have for you is also in your packet. If you don't have it in your packet, let me know. I'll give you a copy. Some years ago, 2006, 2007, we completed a couple capital projects, and we didn't use all the money that was set aside for it. And so it's been sitting there in these two different capital project funds, just sitting there. And so it's time to clean it up, close those funds because those projects are long done, and sweep those tailings into our stabilization fund for use in future capital projects. So I bring this for you tonight to see if you would vote to close those funds and sweep the tailings into our stabilization fund.
Rob?
I'd like to ask a question before we make the motion. If we make the motion as written, I guess my question is it wise to make the motion as written? Do we want to tie this money to future capital projects by making the motion the way it's written?
Yes, it has to be, they have to be used for capital projects or returned to the towns that supplied the funding. That gets complicated because quite a bit of this funding actually came from stabilization in the first place. So it's unpacking that gets
cleaner.
yeah. Thank you.
Would you make the motion, Rob?
Sure. I move to close Fund 3000, Middle School Roof Fund, with $33,792.38 remaining, and to close Fund 3010, Middle School Rehab Fund, with $48,538.84, and to transfer the remaining $82,331.22 to the Stabilization Fund 8950 to be used for future capital projects.
Is there a second?
Second.
Michael seconds. Any comments? Then let's vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you for that housekeeping. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I have a few more things to talk to you about. One is that the last few years, we've had a budget and finance subcommittee of the school committees to review and process numbers, data, budgets, formatting, the budget details, so as to not bog down this meeting with all that deliberation, but to have interested people get into the details, get into the discussion, deliberation, and then bring a recommendation to this body for action. So it's that time of year again. The committee last year was formed by the chairs of the three committees, which is fine because everybody's a member of the regional school committee anyway. So we had Debbie Gould, and we had Rick Hood, and we had Irv Rhodes. Well,
We did it.
I would like to suggest that this body
Yes.
appoint another budget and finance subcommittee.
Eh.
What would you do, you ask? Okay, so one of the things you would be doing
I
is,
just want to hear it.
it's talking about OPEB and how we're going to fund this thing if and or when we're going to fund it. We would be talking about capital plans. So the last couple of years, we've had a capital planning process in the region. We're going to look at the requests, we're going to prioritize them, we're going to decide what we're going to fund in which year, and come up with a capital budget for the following year. We're going to look at fees and review the fees and decide if any fees need increasing or not. Because we increased most of them last year after years of neglect. Probably not too much action happening there, but it's one of the things we want to do on a regular, ongoing basis. We'll want to talk about the budget format. We'll want to talk about what guidance you all might want to provide to the administration for performing a budget. The decision may be made in this body, but a lot of discussion, preliminary discussion can be had in that body, for instance. So there's a lot of finance and the budget stuff that can be properly discussed in that subcommittee before coming to the full committee. Yes,
Rob, would it be advantageous to have some continuity from last year's subcommittee to this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So at our last meeting, we, I believe, agreed that we would have Debbie, even though she wasn't here to decide, Rick, Kip, and Shabazz, I think, were the four that were going to join from the school committee. So we decided to people were interested, those were the four interested to join for the budget subcommittee this year.
Rob, you have a look on your face like maybe a comment or...
Well, I actually was talking to Ms. Appy earlier, and she had some interest as well. And I don't know, I had forgotten about this decision having been made, but I want to make sure that
Well, we
that
can't
gets
get to the point of having a quorum.
vetted.
Right,
True.
that's fine.
Oh, sorry, I'm totally jumping in.
Rick,
No, I think you can, because that's a real subcommittee that has to do open meeting law and all that anyways, right?
Can your subcommittees be a
well,
quorum?
policy does, yeah, with only two, well, actually with three. So
Every
Okay.
subcommittee
Rick's
has to
point's
be
well
open
taken.
meeting.
The more the merrier, Catherine. You're more than welcome.
That's exactly what I
Rob?
was going
But
to
I think the question they're asking is then do you have to post it as a school committee meeting if it has a quorum of the regional school committee?
We've been posting meetings for the policy subcommittee meeting right along.
No, I know, but would you have to post the budget subcommittee
Yeah,
meeting
it's a
as a
story.
joint regional
Oh,
school
I'm sorry.
committee
Oh,
meeting
I'm
if you
sorry.
had a
Oh,
quorum
I
of
see.
school
Yeah,
committee
so
members?
that's what
Annie,
It won't be a joint because Debbie isn't on regional.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, it won't be a quorum because Debbie's
Oh,
not on regional.
there you
right?
go.
That is correct.
So Catherine, you okay?
Okay, all
So-
right.
So we have five.
Excellent.
Chairman.
You okay?
Chairman,
Just a minute, please. So we have those
So we
five?
do, we
Okay.
have, yep.
Trevor, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand
Excuse me,
the
Trevor, excuse me. I would recognize you when you raise your hand. If you call me out, the chances are very high I will not recognize you. So
Gotcha.
please, it's just for the sake of keeping my sanity.
I
Okay.
don't want you to go insane, but I don't
Thank
want you
you.
to be
I
blind
appreciate-
either.
I appreciate
My
that,
hand
but
was
you-
raised,
I
but when you didn't
understand
see it, I had to say your name.
I understand that, but if you're just
Mhm.
patient, raise your hand, I will recognize you.
I'll raise it higher next time, so you can see it. I had my hand
The
raised
height,
before.
neither the height
you
nor the
called me.
speed matters, just simply raise it.
I'll raise it. Now, I want to make sure I understand what was just said here, that if more than Catherine comes to the subcommittee, then it is a regional quorum. If I showed up at the committee, it's not a regional quorum.
Rob?
If you were to just show up and watch, it would not be a quorum. If you were to show up and participate in discussions, it could violate open meeting law for the regional school committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
And if I could just, nothing to do with quorums or anything, but I also want us to remember, for us, if we're working in a subcommittee, the more we have, the more complicated the conversations become too, so it really has to be very focused, not to dissuade anyone from coming, because people do come. Fred comes regularly. Fred is at every one of our meetings. But, you know, the purpose of the subcommittee is also to take a smaller group to do some of the work and bring it back to the committee for their decision-making. So, I just say that because the room gets busy. Bless you.
Thank you.
Allergies, I know.
Great. So,
Okay, so that's done now.
typically, the last couple of years, we've met every other week during budget season. And I'd like to propose, I don't know if it's the right place or not, that we'd have our first meeting next Wednesday, September 19th.
What time?
We
4
do
o'clock?
evenings typically.
Whatever works for the committee. I mean, in the last couple of years, we've worked on Wednesdays. We've met on Wednesdays at 4 because it was convenient for the membership.
Did you?
With the new members, maybe I could just send something around and see if it works for everybody, and do it that way.
Just, I don't know if we have any other meetings scheduled for,
We don't.
okay.
What time Wednesday, Rob?
We've done Wednesdays at 4, if that works.
Okay.
I'll send an email around to everybody and see if we can set something up.
Thank you.
Not
Is that
take
okay for
more time
folks?
here. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more thing before I go, sorry. Just this is coming attractions. This is the year where we are in our last contract year with Whitson's Incorporated, our food service management company. And so during this year, we'll be going out to get proposals from food service companies to do our food services for the next 3 to 5 years. So that's going to involve putting together a food service committee to come up with the criteria we're looking for in a food service company, what the ranking and rating schedule is going to look like, and so forth. So just a heads up, we'll want to get a subcommittee together to work through the load. Will be in October, November, December. January, we'll probably put out the RFP. February, we'll be reviewing the applications, interviewing candidates, and making a decision. So that's kind of a time frame. Just a heads up, I'll be back next month asking you to come up with a committee. Okay. Thank you.
Michael?
Just a request in terms of forming the committee. I mean, this region in particular is very active in terms of thinking about how to do food delivery in a more positive alternative way. And so I just sort of request that maybe you sort of look far afield beyond just sort of us and look at the expertise. Because I know there's other districts that are doing it, and even private sector nonprofit types.
Yep. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm just recruiting from this group, but also we'll be recruiting from parents, community members, staff. It's a big tent. But since you guys signed the contract, I need a couple of you guys there too.
Maria, then Rob.
It's okay, can we
Just
do
a quick question, is this RFP, is this done in conjunction with the Amherst and the Pelham districts at the same
Yes.
time?
Yeah. It's one of those contracts that's beneficial to go out together to get group purchasing. So we do that for food service, we do that for transportation, we do that for oil, we do it for big ticket items. We typically go together as a group and get better pricing.
And we also will be starting the wellness committee which food service is part of the consideration around, as well as anti-bullying and, mental health support for students and phys ed, physical education, as well as, what was the other area I was going to mention?
Health education.
Oh, there we go, health education. So we are starting that committee right now, and Dr. Faye Brady, will be facilitating that with Robin Supernaut, who's our nurse leader, and there's a number of community members, as well as people who work in the Department of Public Health and other people who'd like to be part of that group. So we will be starting that very, very soon, and I know that will feed into some of the priorities for who might be providing food service for our students.
Any other comments or questions?
You wanted to talk about OPEB?
No, that's just one of the things that the subcommittee needs to
Okay,
talk
subcommittee,
about.
okay.
I've actually
Just wanna
gone
be
through my
clear.
whole list, but thank you.
Oh, excellent.
Michael?
Yeah, just a point of information for the committee members in case you didn't know. State law changed in the last year in terms of the quality and type of food that's required in terms of food service delivery. So what is no longer possible throughout the state, and so it really is a transformative year.
Right, and it's time for us to take a renewed look at that, just to see. I mean, our vendor has been within, some of the expectations, but I think it's reasonable for the community to take a look at kind of what the expectations are and how that looks, because it's very different in, Leverett Elementary, Shutesbury Elementary, and our Amherst school. So I think it'll be a very rich conversation. It always is.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it's a transformative year in the world of fairly funded school lunch program. And our current vendor has been very close to what the standards turned out to be. There's a few things that need tweaking, but hey. But we hope in October to bring somebody in to explain what the new world looks like, what the rules are, how it's changed, what the impact is. We had sent home a flyer to parents at the end of the year explaining some of these changes, giving them a heads up that kids might be complaining that they don't get the food they used to get, that they're being forced to eat vegetables, and that there's an awful lot of whole wheat stuff going on, and helping parents to include some of those new dietary guidelines in cooking at home, at least on an occasional basis, to get kids used to eating healthier foods. So it is a transformational year. You're exactly right. We've been notifying parents about that, and we'll bring something to you all in October, I hope. So give you a heads up.
Anything else? Thank you, Rob, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to subcommittee reports, I've asked Michael to present a summary of the work of the regional planning board since the last time we met. There's been a lot of work done sort of outside of official meetings, and I just have asked Michael to bring us up to speed on what's been happening up to tonight and what to look forward to beginning at tomorrow night's meeting. Michael?
Great, thanks. I will be brief. I think, Kip's on target in that this body is going to be impacted by whatever rolls out, so the more you can keep abreast. So there's 4 areas I just want to touch upon. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time, but administratively, there was a memorandum of understanding that was signed between the 3 key parties. So it's Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which is the regional planning agency for Amherst and Pelham. The Regional School District Planning Board, which is a legal body, but it can't sign contracts. And then the region, this region. And so there was a whole bunch of discussion about what their responsibilities and expectations are, but those are 3 bodies, and they signed an MOU that I'm sure Kip can send around if people have a question, but that was probably a month process to get that all. And what that ended up doing is opening up the process for us to go to the next step, we'll talk about, which is funding for grants. So DESE put forth a regionalization grant. I think it was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago they announced it. Last year they announced money, but none of our 4 towns were eligible. The rules were such that you had to be under foundation, and so no one was eligible. This year that stipulation is gone. The expectation is that the Regional School District Planning Committee Board will be applying. The deadline is the 14th, which is Friday. We're meeting as a board tomorrow to approve it. It's written. So I think once it's approved, we can probably get it to everybody. Kip was noting that it's actually a pretty good primer for what's been going on. So once it's approved, we can distribute it to this body, and I think that'd be helpful. The other that will officially be announced tomorrow, but was on email today, is Administration and Finance is releasing regionalization grant as well. Last year we applied for that funding. We were told that there was a lot of competition. So DESE is only education regionalization. A&F is anybody who wants to regionalize. So it's police, fire, public health, whatever. Last year there was $4 million in A&F, and they had about $40 million in requests. So it was steep competition. We didn't get it, we were told, because we hadn't created a board at that point. Despite Trevor's best efforts, we weren't a board at that point. So the expectation is we'll go for that money as well. And it's targeted in that the DESE money goes through June 30th, the A&F money goes through the end of the calendar year, so December 31st. So they can cover different things, and part of the strategy, I think, at the board meeting is to figure out what we're applying for what. But the good news is we've done a lot of prep, we're really organized, we're ready to jump in for this stuff, and I would suspect that we have a fighting chance of getting some of this money that would facilitate the process. The other two quick things, the thing that differentiates this process from the processes that have occurred in the last 50 years is that rather than having volunteers sit around the table and try to get information, and sometimes it's more comprehensive and more detailed and other times it's not, we're really looking to get consultants and expert assistance to sort of get this. So with the signing of the MOU and the grants and process and some money that the regional planning agencies are bringing, and potentially the regional money if that's needed, we're on track to sort of identify an educational consultant. We'll just look at sort of the educational status quo, benefits, the whole dynamics of that, and then the finances. And so the hope is that sometime in October those can be designated, and then the findings would come back to us as a board in January, and then subsequently released, to the public, and we'd have forums and discussions and deliberations. So that's sort of they're queued up. It's not quite happened yet, but that's soon to happen in the next weeks. And then lastly, just in terms of information and engagement, which is really important. I said it last time, but just to say it again, there is a website that we're building that's got information and it's growing. It's regionalschoolplanning.com. We're hoping, and this is going to be discussed tomorrow, to do a session similar to the Four Towns budget meetings, but around this topic. So that's hopefully to get queued up in October, November, with the idea that there's a range of public officials, whether it's SelectCom, FinComs, librarians, principals, whoever is officially representing the government and municipalities, to understand what it is, and then subsequent to that going out to the public. So that it hasn't gotten decided yet, but that's the intent, to sort of have concentric circles of people who are engaged and need to understand it. And lastly, we're developing fact sheets that are really sort of the facts of what is happening, so what exists now, what's been happening, not value statements, not looking at models, but really sort of many people for no reason would want to understand what's happening up until this point, but now they want to say, so what is it, how is it organized, what are you trying to do? So to get that basic information without any values laid on it. I know Leverett and Shutesbury are putting it in their town newsletters that are coming out. I'm not sure about the Pelham and Amherst schedules, but it's starting to go out from a factual basis of just sort of putting information out there. So, like Kip said, we're meeting tomorrow night. There's subcommittee meetings that are happening. There's interviewing happening. The Education Committee, I know, interviewed the superintendent for Union 28. I don't know if they've met with Maria yet, but there's lots of stuff happening, and it seems like if we regularly report back, that might be helpful to this committee.
Just to piggyback on Michael's comments, I would encourage I know a number of you are already on the board, but those of you who aren't, at some point, regardless of where this finally ends up going, you're going to be targeted for comments and questions by members of the community. And while Michael has done an exemplary job of providing a summary, there really is nothing like being there and listening. And I know people are really maxed out with meetings and what have you, but these are pretty critical. They have to do you know, they're sort of the existential meetings for the district. They are not to be taken lightly. At some point, some pretty serious decisions are going to have to be made that we're all going to have to weigh in on. And the better prepared we are to make those decisions, the more informed, and the more informed the public is, they will understand whatever decision that we make. So I would encourage you to try your very best. You don't have to attend all of them, but attend what you can. And also encourage community members who you know to stop by and pay a visit to the meetings. As Michael pointed out, they're on the website. There's nothing, it's all pretty transparent. It's very transparent. And so there's every effort being made to inform the public at every single juncture. And when you look at the blocks, I don't know if you recall that, that template that was created, but if you can imagine that moving, it's going to be picking up speed as we move into the new year and approach March. And then if the decision goes a certain way in March, then it really picks up and accelerates from March to the end of the year. So please pay attention. There's a lot going on. Trevor and then Kathy.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what each of you are saying and emphasize an important point, because it's already begun of the public coming and, you know, misinformation or feelings about what's happening. So I want to emphasize, if it wasn't explained and understood, the point that we're at right now is we have expended energy and organization and money to get the information about whether or not we should regionalize. I don't want anybody to be confused about all this energy and preparation and stuff is going towards a decision that has already been made. So we have appropriated funds. We have set about finding people that can bring us the information about whether or not we should regionalize. And so that decision is staved off for a while. And as the public becomes more engaged, and it's beginning to happen now, that point can't be emphasized enough. So the fact sheets that and the website and other things that put out are very important. But this kind of news spreads by word of mouth, and the word should be, it has not been decided what is going to happen, but people are looking at it. That's the word.
That's important.
That's very important to state.
I agree. That's a very important point, Trevor. And I want to add one more piece to that very important point, and a place that I think there is already misunderstanding about, and I've certainly heard about it anecdotally from members of the community, which is that this body and the regionalization board are not making the final decision.
Right.
So we may recommend regionalization or we may not, but ultimately it is the communities who are going to vote and decide. And so some of what I've been hearing is that, well, this is happening behind people's backs and they're going to vote and the train has left the station, and, you know, train's not going anywhere unless the community votes. Which is why it's so important that we get as much information as possible out to the community. And that's really a huge focus of this board. But this idea that the board or anybody else is making the decision, I think, is out there and is making people nervous, and I think it's important for people to understand that that's in fact not the case.
Well said.
Any other comments or questions to Michael or for the board? Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
Thank you. Excellent summary. I don't believe that there are any other subcommittee reports, or are there? No?
Nope.
So let's move on, unless there's any objection, move on to the calendar. And if we could begin with the September 25th, is that?
Yes, that's, I'm going to hand this out again. Can I speak to it
Of
for
course,
one moment?
please.
So you're going to see something coming around, and we're trying again to include all of the budget conversations that we need to have over the next few months. Just an orientation to the document at this point is you see the dates on your left. You see the middle column reflects what you have, you know, viewed historically for the past, you know, couple of meetings. This is the information you've had in front of you. And the right-hand column is what kind of where we are in terms of scheduling meetings to date. So the key is things that are in red, that are written in red, the text itself, are FY14 budget topics. You see there's a key on the last page. Green highlighted indicates new dates for some of or all of the school committee members, because we had to switch some around to make sure that they were the appropriate voting meetings or mechanisms for budget. Yellow indicates a change in agenda topics with no date change. And blue highlight means a discussion is needed about the number or the type of topics. So I thought this might be helpful to kind of orient people to where we are at the moment. It's been quite a chore, actually, fitting in the number of topics we need to fit into our calendar for the year, including a very tight budget process, which is involved, for those of you who have been involved previously, a region has its own process because of the 4 town connections, and then Pelham and Amherst being departments of towns, we have our own process that we need to adhere to in conjunction to those towns. So having it all fit together in a schedule for the year, as well as the other topics that the committee would like to hear from the school system about, is complex. So I think it might be helpful just to, I think there's one meeting that I really could use some help with, but I think noting maybe the green that, because those are the changes and new dates for some school committee meetings, members, I'm sorry, which doesn't look like September 24th is that. When I look at it now, it was a joint meeting. It is now a joint meeting, so the topic's different, so I apologize for that.
September 24th.
Yeah, so what we're looking at now is our next meeting is Amherst is on the 18th, and we have consistent topics. We have September 24th. We have a joint meeting. At this point, we are offering, oh, that is a change in date, I'm sorry. We were scheduled for the 25th, but because of a holiday, we wanted to respect that and ask for if members could meet potentially on the 24th. So that is a question for people to look at their calendars and see if that could work. The topic we would do, given that it's kind of out of sync at the moment, is to really look at our MCAS scores, which will be coming out officially in the next week or so. So we'd like to do that as a joint meeting so that we look at MCAS performance across all of our schools and districts at the same time, and then deal with a little bit of budget finance issues. Then what kind of shifts at that point is we then have our next meeting, which was a regional meeting on October 9th, to ask that to be a joint meeting, because then we need to put the district improvement plans in place with no other topics. There was a concern that we want to make sure we're not jamming too much in. And then the meeting would be really helpful to get feedback on, because it was commented last time, I think by Michael, when we talked about October 23rd. And again, we're going through MCAS performance, district improvement plan, school improvement plan, and then we're getting into some heavier topics before we get to superintendent evaluation. The 23rd, we have a couple key topics. So what I'd like to ask of the committee is if we could commit to having those 3 topics, which the later start time discussion and devoting an hour maximum, if we have our information out in advance, the teaching and learning update, which is timely. There's some questions around where we are in terms of the math work, in particular at the secondary level. Where are we in that process? And Rhonda would like to come and give an update, which would include elementary and secondary. And then the superintendent evaluation process is really a 20-minute, because the chairs are meeting with me, as we discussed and decided at our, I think it was at our retreat, that the chairs would meet, become oriented with the system. We're using the forms from the state, so there isn't a lot of upfront work. And then it's fairly prescribed what the superintendent is being evaluated based on the standards from the state, and then 2 to 4 goals from the district improvement plan. So I'd love to, and I have to create an student achievement goal and a professional practice goal. So I'll be working with the chairs ahead of time. So my hope is that I don't know how to fit all of this in if we don't do it on this night. So I guess what I'm asking for a little bit of indulgence is if we have to go over a 2-hour meeting that night, people might be willing to do that for one night. And we've been very careful with our time frame. So that's and that's probably as far as we probably should go, because then we get very heavy in budget process for the next couple months.
Michael, before I call on you, the question that Maria's asking about extending time, I think, is an incredibly important one. And as a new chair, I can perhaps be taken to task for being a bit rigid in terms of how I conduct business of this committee. But I believe that this is our business meeting. It's not a conversation over drafts or sodas or what have you. And we have an incredible amount of very important business to conduct. I feel very strongly about maximizing the efficiency of what time we have. And so if at times I've appeared to be abrupt or even rude with people, I apologize for that. But my objective is to make absolutely certain that we get through this material, these issues and these matters before us in as efficient, but also in a manner that allows everyone to genuinely believe that they've had an opportunity to speak and be heard. There obviously have to be limits to that, but I think everyone here recognizes that there's an incredible amount here to bite off and try to deal with. And I think we need to work together collaboratively to make sure that by the time June rolls around, we can look back on it and say that everything's been done to our satisfaction. So I'm gonna echo Maria's request that at least once we look at a meeting, if we can prepare ahead of time for it, a meeting that would last longer than the normal 2 or 2.5 hours. I'm gonna ask that you make that sacrifice in order for us to get through this business. Maria?
If I could just say one more before people, there are still a few topics that the committees have raised that the chairs will have to still discuss before we're putting on the agenda, but that I've also tried to include in the upcoming meetings the points that were raised by the committee for us to hear about or discuss. So I think you'll see when you look through the additions of the points that we've talked about, minus maybe 1 or 2 that we're still discussing.
There's a bunch of quick thoughts. One, just based on what you were saying, I think from my experience, you're doing a really good job of balancing input with keeping us on task. It's a balancing act. So I just wanted to appreciate you because it's not easy to be in the hot seat. I would support going longer. That was going to be one of my suggestions before you said it. It seems like, at least for later start, this is going to be one of the bigger decisions that this committee makes this year, if not for a few years. So that makes sense to me. 2 questions I had. One is, I don't know if it makes sense if we move the superintendent evaluation to the prior meeting, since it's, it seems like if we're doing the dip and the SIP, maybe there's some connectivity there. And the last thing was, just for clarity around the late start, I think we should be clear about if it's a discussion leading to a vote, or if it's just a discussion with the vote subsequent.
That was one of my questions.
And I mean, I understood, and again, this is, I think, a decision of the committee. I understood that it would be, because we've had multiple discussions, that we would get the information out to the committee 2 weeks in advance, and people would be prepared to discuss and vote.
Great. So if we can maybe list it accordingly, that would be just help.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, I think, I don't know about other communities, but I know in Leverett, the rumors floating around about what the proposal is going to be, and the anxiety over making a decision. I think we're probably, if we're not ready to vote on the 23rd, then something's wrong. It would seem to me that would be an appropriate time to make that decision. Trevor?
Just some clarification
Yes.
about exactly what you expect to have in the proposal, or the 2 weeks before. What are you putting in? I remember the last time the school committee talked about it, there were various members that were asking for other information. So
Yes. So what we did, if I could, what we did is I met with the chairs. Well, I met with some of the chairs, and one member, Michael, who had asked for a substantial amount of information to be considered prior to making the vote, or having the vote happen. So that meeting, I brought Ron Bohanowitz and Rich Farrow into the room, and we went through all of the questions that have been posed from the committee, and they are in fact-finding mode right now, so that they're putting together a pretty comprehensive plan that would be presented for either the 9 o'clock start time with a very clear picture of what would be the potential effects on athletics specifically, and a closer, with some comparisons to other school districts in terms of how many students are being affected by changes that could occur with the 9 o'clock start time, as well as a tighter costing of transportation. Then we're also looking at if there were a start time between 8 and 8:30, what would that financial implication be if we look at various models? One could be staggering start times for the Leverett, Shutesbury, Pelham of starting at 8 o'clock, maybe with just elementary drop-off, and then buses go and pick up Leverett, Shutesbury, Pelham secondary students, and then pick up Amherst and have a K-12 kids on the bus at the same time with a bus monitor. So I've asked Ron Bahanos to be very creative in how this might look, so that you're going to have two potential options with lots of data that I think answers every question.
That sounds
So
like
that's
a
what
good
we're,
idea.
that's what, and we're shooting for that information. Once we have that, we're going to sit together, we're going to package it. It's going to come to the committee 2 weeks in advance for your review.
Anyone else? Rick?
Yeah, the two meetings that I am concerned about is, one is September 24th, where it says OPEB vote, and it also says that we were going to have OPEB discussion tonight, which we didn't have, so I don't know as I'd vote and discuss in the same
Yeah,
night.
I think, I'm going to probably have to change that one, because I thought that Rob was going to discuss it tonight, so I'll change that one.
That's one thing, and then on the MCAS on September 24th, can we make sure that we have a report that isn't just a snapshot of here we are,
Yeah.
but that really, really looks into, where we've been for the last 5 years, and does all
Yep.
that jazz and compares with, okay.
I'd love to, if I could just say, Mike Morris is presenting that for us, and we've already been, we have preliminary information, which is embargoed, and I'm not allowed to share with anyone yet. But we're looking at the changes in the reporting status for Massachusetts right now. We're looking at growth for our school systems and per building over a number of years. So we're going to show the level of growth, and we're going to show the comparison to the state. So we're going to show our performance to the state and to other systems, but we're also going to show our growth over time. So we're going to have some nice information that will really paint a picture of where we're sitting and where we're seeing our work to be done, and where we're showing some nice growth. So yeah, Mike is prepared.
And then on the October 9th
Yep.
meeting, I'm still pretty concerned about doing all that in one night. So you've got district improvement plan, you've got high school, middle school improvement
Yep.
plans, and 4 elementary school plans. But if we are gonna do them all in one night, my suggestion would be get all the plans to us in the
Oh, yeah.
package, by Saturday at the latest, and then restrict the presentation to, 10 minutes max, maybe even 5 minutes for each school, and then just say, any questions?
So, absolutely, we'll get them to you in advance, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the foundational understanding that there are some documents which our district improvement plan and school improvement plans are based on, which is, around what's considered current best practice. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the foundation of how you create a plan, what's considered best practice in reforming a school system. And then we'll be talking about the district improvement plan, what is continuous improvement, and how we created those conditions. And then we would be going through, there are 5 goals at this moment on the district improvement plan. And as I articulate each goal, I will say the first goal is X, and here are some of the action steps taken at the district level. And at that point, each school will say, and here's the action step that connects to that one goal. So it won't be discrete presentations. It's all going to be a comprehensive presentation that we're coordinating, putting together in one. So I think it actually, I don't think it's going to take as long as we anticipate how it's been in the past with having them be very separate. It's really going to show the connections. But we will learn from this if it turns into something that's too long. But we really are going to time it and prepare and run through it together. So that we stay within the time frame.
And then finally, maybe it's related to October 9th, I'm really still interested in the quote district report card thing, so we know what we're looking at to know whether we approved or not. And so I'm interested in having that on an agenda at some point, or maybe it's part of the district improvement plan.
May I?
No, please.
As far as the report card issue is concerned, I think that should be something that the entire committee be involved in, having a conversation and a decision regarding whether or not that's a format that it wants to use to receive information. So it should be on the agenda at some point.
Absolutely.
Anything else from members of the committee regarding the calendar? Michael?
Just 2 quick observations. One, if we're maybe not doing the OPEB on the 24th, if there's a little space for juggling, if you can move
Yes.
things forward, that's a slot. And just on the the October 23rd, I would presume, Mr. Chair, that we might have public comment that's longer than this evening's.
Right.
So,
Oh, could I also, just specific to Amherst, just because I wanted to call your attention to, if the committee doesn't mind, on Tuesday, October 16th is when the per pupil expense analysis report is going to be presented by the people who helped create that. So that is just something I want to make note of, that that is coming up soon. Didn't want to forget to make note of that one.
Okay. Michael, let me come back to your request there. I'm not sure, I may have misunderstood. Do you want more public
I was just giving a
time
heads up.
during that hour for a later start, or?
Yeah, I was just
or
thinking.
in addition to that hour?
Well, it speaks to the expanded meeting time. I
Oh.
think there'll be public comments, so we might want to talk for an hour, but there might be.
Right.
So if we don't account for a longer public comment session than normal.
Okay, but you're asking for that in addition to the hour block for us, maximum?
I think we need to talk for an hour, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood. I may have responded too quickly.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else on the calendar? If I may, just one
Of course.
maybe sensitive topic that's sort of percolated here during the discussion. Insisting that time be used efficiently and productively, and yet at the same time allow people to be heard. It's important that people be given adequate time to do their homework in preparation for a meeting. And I think when you look at that right-hand column all the way through from January to June, from August to June, it's pretty clear that central office generates an enormous number of reports during the course of the year, and they're all very time-sensitive. And so I'm a little reluctant to request this, but it's particularly true, I think, for the small towns, but even more so for all of us, I think, given the emphasis on making absolutely certain that people come prepared with their questions, they know what we're going to be talking about, and we can use time efficiently, that we have the packets sooner. I know that puts an enormous burden on Deb. She does a super job. And if we could perhaps allocate more resources to assist her in doing that, if that's possible, I think it would benefit us all the way around.
So how much sooner are we talking about?
If I don't come in to pick them up on Friday, I don't get them till Tuesday.
Okay.
So, and I think that's true for a number of.
So it would be sending them out?
I think it's true for Shutesbury. I don't know about Pelham, but Leverett and Shutesbury. Yeah, Mike?
I mean, it would be great to have them to read over the weekend.
Okay.
You know, so I got mine on Monday night, which gives me, the
So
day
what
of
is-
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, what does it take to get to Leverett Shrewsbury? Is it a 2-day?
Yeah.
2 days safe.
So if we send out Wednesday?
Yeah, we should get them by Friday.
And the other thing,
Okay.
I mean,
At the
Trevor and
latest,
I
we'll get them
both,
Saturday then.
Okay.
Trevor and I signed up for
Thank
email.
you for saying that.
And if email facilitates getting it to us sooner, that's cool.
That's fine too, yeah. Trevor?
I was gonna say that I got it by email maybe last week Wednesday. So I started reading by email and was pleasantly surprised to get it in the mail this weekend. So had I started reading it this weekend, which was as busy, as hard for me to do, it might have been hard for me to read all the homework. But I was able to pre-read the homework by email, and that seems to be working.
Well, I think this is significant because if we are going to request this from Deb and central office staff, then we have a responsibility and an obligation to make absolutely certain that we do diligence in doing our homework so that we come through those doors prepared to engage in conversation and debate. Michael?
Just a fact in talking to Deb recently about this, she actually finds email easier, so if she were to do, that
Email
would make
is
her life
easier.
easier.
For us, I think part of the issue, and again, it's when you see the cycle of the school, when you have multiple school committees and you have the cycle of generating reports, sometimes the turnaround time from getting the information, whether that's, MCAS scores or something, to the point where you have to turn around and present, it's a short window. So that's where a couple days matters to people. So I think this will be helpful so that people can, as much as we can anticipate in advance, because it's the same people who are generating some of the same reports. So I just want to be conscious of that for them. And what I'll do is I will bring this back to the leadership team and say, let's take a solid look at this, and see what the request is and see how we can make this happen. We'll do our best.
And in light of that, I think also, if you look at all of the reports, it's pretty hard to identify any information that we could possibly want or need that's not gonna be here somewhere. So we need to think carefully and thoughtfully about, you know, if we're gonna make a request for yet another report, is it really necessary in light of
Right.
what's happening here over the course of the 10 months of the school year?
Yeah, and I think it does become really apparent, in particular at budget time, that almost anything else asked for is really difficult when I have the group generating 3 budgets. You know, so 3 budgets, 3 data reports, and compiling all that information. It's, you know, it's the same people doing all 3. So, not to complain, because that's not a complaint, but just to be conscious of the demand on
It's
staff.
real.
It is real. It is.
Anything else members of the committee wanna, Shabazz?
So, since we're doing so great on time, a few things came to my mind that I'd like to pose. One is, I know it takes a little while for school to start up and maybe for the school children to elect or appoint or whatever, but I do miss our student rep.
Yes.
It was such a big deal earlier in the year to have a school rep, and yet here we are starting up and there's no student. So I don't know where that stands.
I'll check in with Zoe and see when she's starting and see what her timeline is.
I
but
thought
yeah.
it was even sort of rotating.
Well, they had to do an election, so what I want to check with them is, did they elect someone new? Because Zoe was with us until the end of the year. I think it was in January when they re-elect, so I assume she's still with us, but I will check in.
The other thing is the educator handbook.
Yes.
And interested in knowing how that data, that is now, 2 years worth of data?
1 year.
It's only
1 year.
year?
Yeah, Crocker Farm initiated a little bit before others, but others were probably almost a full year now. Yeah.
So curious to know how it's being used to help make different sorts of decisions that help to alleviate some of our discipline problems. Wherever that might come into play in future calendar items, I don't know. But and then the other thing is some of us here that volunteered and are attended meeting of the Collaborative for Educational Services Board of Governors, and it might I know be helpful for me as one of the representatives, perhaps for some others, particularly newer ones on it, to have a sense from other school committee members, towns, from the superintendent, ideas of things that we could bring into that governance body that might be important. They look for the input, they see us as a partner, and so if there are areas where we're working with them, I found it interesting to note that they are a provider, consider themselves a major provider for the new teacher evaluator system, although you made an appointment from within to kind of deal with it, I guess, internally without having to use something like the collaborative, but I did see that they are trying to be a provider in certain areas that can help us. So I'm interested to know how the collaborative is on your radar for certain things, what kinds of things within the governance level that would be important, you think, for us to bring forward, as well as colleagues from the towns to bring forward, since it represents a very large region. I'd be very interested in hearing your ideas. We meet again in November.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, I saw the minutes. Thank, that was great. We,
Thank you.
we need to send those out to everyone.
Anyone else? Anything? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Governance level that would be important, you think, for us to bring forward, as well as colleagues from the towns to bring forward, since it represents a very large region. I'd be very interested in hearing your ideas. We meet again in November.
Great.
Thank you, Shimon.
Yeah, I saw the minutes. That was great. We need to send those out to everyone.
Anyone else? Anything? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Bob?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Adjournment.
Thank you.